his phone just kept ringing, my heart sank because he always picks up on the second ring.
Eyewitnesses are stunned at what unfolded.
He didn't come in for his Reuben sandwich.
He did seem a little disturbed lately, erratic even. But you know how security guys can be, demanding, but nothing out of the ordinary. He was very diligent and patched constantly, always happy to do his job. I put a lot of responsibility on him. Maybe it was too much.
I didn't see him emerge from the sock for his smoke break. That's when I knew something was wrong.
It was from 2015! I never thought it would matter!
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us, and hoping to give you a bit of an introduction today to vRx. So, for those of you that don't know me, my name's David Gray, so I'm Solution Architect Lead for EMEA for Vicarious. So I cover everything from, more generally from a technical perspective. So I'll aim today really just to give an intro in terms of vRx and what we do from a technical perspective rather than the marketing kind of blurb. So first off, just a little bit of background. So in terms of the challenges that we are here to really address, if you're not aware, it's really looking at the consolidation of what most customers have is multiple tools for doing vulnerability assessment, risk prioritization, remediation. And what we see is that that's a real challenge to manage in terms of the different teams, in terms of the different tools, in terms of the different licensing. So what we did with vRx is we're aiming to bring all of those different platforms together, those different challenges, the technical and the commercial, to understand what we can do with a single pane of glass to manage the entire life cycle of vulnerabilities. So that's taking it right the way through from identifying and managing the vulnerabilities through the prioritization to understand where the risk really lies within the organization, through to the remediation. So that's remediation, whether we have patches available, whether we don't have patches available, what are the options. So what I'll do today is I'll just give you a brief taster to give you some ideas how we can go about dealing with that. Now, of course, if you do have any questions while I'm going through, please use the chat window. Please let us know if there's any questions. Also, if you do want to go into more detail and have a more in-depth demonstration or to test the platform yourselves, you're more than welcome. Reach out. We're more than happy to run through proofs of concept with you and for you to get some hands-on time to test what the platform really can do and how it can help in your own environment. Of course, every environment's different, so there's nothing like testing it in your own environment. So without further ado, what I shall do is I shall bring up the dashboard and I shall give you an introduction to vRx to give you that taste. So let me just bring that up, sorry. So what I'm showing you here is a dashboard of vRx that you would see when you first log in. So it's really designed to give overview into the environment. So what we have is we have information about the applications that you can see up at the top here. We have information about the assets and the operating systems. We also typically will highlight any new applications and assets when we actually identify them. So we flag those so that you can see new information within the environment. Further down, we have information about the risk level of the assets, and that's to help you really focus where the risk lies within the environment. So I'll explain a little more about the risk and how that works in a moment. Then we have a breakdown as to whether the assets are online or offline, so that you can see quickly and easily what's the status. Further down, we have information about the vulnerabilities and the trends over time, so that you can see easily what's the detection events, what's the mitigation events, so that you can see over time the progress of detection and mitigation of those CVEs. Down at the bottom, we also have a quick highlight of the available updates in terms of operating system and applications. We also have the breakdown into the vulnerabilities and the threats, so that we can see in a more traditional view, what are those vulnerabilities. So the way we work is we have an agent that we install on all of the managed endpoints. That agent retrieves various pieces of information. So we have a cloud-based dashboard. It does mean that you can manage your assets wherever they are. So whether you're in the cloud, whether you have on-premise, whether you have workers from home, wherever you are, as long as you've got internet connectivity for that agent, we can manage that, and we can give you visibility and management capabilities across that asset. So we retrieve various pieces of information, starting with IP address. We'll retrieve information about the operating system, the last logged in user, hard drive information, BIOS information, and some other hardware information. We then identify what's the operating system and information about the applications, including a broad array of third-party applications. So basically any applications that are installed on those endpoints, and that's Windows, that's Mac, that's Linux. And then we look to identify information about the operating system and any updates that might be available, and any application updates. So that's again across Microsoft and third-party apps. Also, we define the severity level there. Then we take that and we look to identify information about the vulnerabilities, so we can see what those CVEs are on the endpoint. And basically, because we've got that cloud dashboard, it means that we've got near real-time visibility for you in terms of what CVEs are present. So as we publish, as new CVEs are published, we can tell you near real-time, are they relevant to you or are they not relevant? And equally, if we apply patches, we can then see, is that now resolved? Is that now mitigated or not? So it's all of this information, this data that comes together to give an overview and give that dashboard that we see when we first log in. So what we then do is we then start to perform a prioritization, so a contextual prioritization of the assets and the applications. So the aim here is really that we're helping you to simplify the process rather than focusing on thousands and thousands, maybe tens of thousands of CVEs. Where does the risk actually lie within the environment? And the way we do that is through the use of what we call X tags. And these X tags, basically, we start with information like the CVSS score, then we build on that. So we take threat information. So do we have known vulnerabilities? Do we have known exploited vulnerabilities? In terms of usage of the application, we look at whether the application's frequently used. We look at whether it needs admin rights, whether it's active on the network. We look at slightly less dynamic information, so whether we've got patches available. Are we exposed to certain types of attack? Is there social media activity? And we take all of these X tags to generate a risk score. So that's how we arrive at the high risk, the medium risk, and the low risk applications to really help you prioritize where to focus. What we can then do is we can also use these to then start to understand what's actually going on. So for example, if we want to understand whether we have known exploited vulnerabilities within the environment, we can see 8 high-risk applications actually have known exploited vulnerabilities right now. They're being actively exploited. So those are probably applications that we do want to do something about. But we can also take it to the next step. So you could combine these and we can take that to see, okay, out of these applications that have known exploited vulnerabilities, how many of them do we have patches for right now? And you can see we have 3 high-risk applications that have known exploited vulnerabilities, but we've also got patches available. So we could actually move on and start fixing those. So you can then see these are all of those high-risk applications that we have patches and known exploited vulnerabilities for. So we've got various filters that we can make use of. And if we then want to move through to start remediating those, you can see for each of these applications, we can then start to dive in to look at those and look at what can we do to fix it. So, for example, we can apply a patch. If we don't have patches available, we have other actions that we can take. We also give additional information for the application around understanding why is it the risk score it is. So in this instance, why is it high risk? These are the X tags that contribute to the risk score. So we can see this is the reason for it being high risk. We can see information about the versions within the environment. You can see where they're installed and also any associated vulnerabilities. So we do give additional detail around each of those CVEs so that you can see what does that CVE actually mean, including links through to our vSociety website, which has additional links for vendor advisories, maybe additional mitigation approaches to the vulnerabilities. Now, one of the areas that this will be enhanced during the coming year is with our version 2, where we'll start to bring this information within the dashboard. So we'll have that single dashboard where we're enhancing the data around the vulnerabilities with additional data sources. We'll be bringing in EPSS scoring. We'll be bringing in MITRE ATT&CK framework mapping. So we will have additional information, additional relevance, and other ways of viewing the information around those vulnerabilities later in the year. Now, if we wanted to then move on to the remediation, just coming back into the application, you can then start to look at the recommended treatment. So we can see we have the patches available. So we come into the patch management. We do also have a dedicated patch management area over here so that you can focus on patching without the risk if you require. And we can simply select the patch, step through into the patch management where you'll see the application is selected from the previous screen, the patch that I chose already selected, associated assets will run by default immediately. We hit finish, that pushes the patch out immediately. So very, very quick and easy, just a few clicks from the main dashboard and you can already start applying patches and remediate. So that's the manual approach. We can, of course, automate this. So automation is really where vRx comes into its own in terms of reducing workload and reducing the amount of effort that's required to manage the platform. So we can automate based around application updates. We can automate operating system updates. We can run scripts or we can do reboots. If we look at the applications, we can identify all of the applications that we have updates available for right now, or all of the apps that we've seen within the environment, whether we've got patches available or not. So we can start to build a schedule for future patches. And we can just select a few applications to build up a patch group. We can then start to select the severity levels. So for example, in the UK, we have Cyber Essentials, which we're very much focused on critical and high. But equally, if we want to select all of those patch severity levels, you can choose those to get those pushed out as and when they're released. We then have user interaction options so that we can trigger a reboot, and that can be done immediately or set for some point in the future. We can also allow user interaction in terms of cancelling or maybe snoozing a number of times. You can then also add customized messaging so you can keep users informed with pop-ups, what's happening. And then we can choose the asset or asset group so that we can deploy to test systems before production. We can select groups maybe based around certain applications, say web applications. So the groups that we can create, there's lots of flexibility in terms of how we manage that. We can then specify when do we want this to take place. Do you want to do it daily? Do you want to do that weekly? Do you want to do it monthly? or on a custom basis. So maybe every second Wednesday of the month after Patch Tuesday. What time do you want to run? So do you want to run 1 o'clock in the morning, or do we want to run that more during business day? And what's the time window within which we want to run? So do we want to take that through, let's say, through from 9 in the morning till 5 p.m. And then if we want to break that down into subsets of systems to simplify or to stagger and stage the rollout, we can do that as well. So we can deploy to 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, 200 assets every 30 minutes, every hour, every 2 hours. So you can stagger and stage the rollout rather than pushing all at once. We can break it down and take that over a period of time. So we have a lot of options in terms of the scheduling for the automations. Now we can actually bring in other activities, other actions. So for example, if we wanted to bring in an OS update, we could do that. And the OS updates, they're very, very similar in terms of how we would manage that. So we can select the operating system and again, severity levels. So you can just choose what those options are. We could also bring in scripts. So we could run them maybe before or after. We can run them completely separately, completely independently. And these typically are where we're talking from a vulnerability perspective, more about configuration type vulnerabilities. So maybe a registry change, maybe a config change. So this is things like the log4shell vulnerability, for example, where we have we can find vulnerable log4j files. We have scripts for that, but we also have remediation for that. So we can also put in place remediation for those log4j vulnerabilities. So we have a large library of scripts that we have a team who are creating, they're updating those scripts constantly. And typically we'll have, with the scripts here, we'll have a detection script and a remediation script. So we'll find and then we'll fix. But you also have operational activities. So removing software, configuring other actions. We can do Windows hardening. So disabling SMB, for example, or forcing certain TLS versions. We can also take these scripts and you can create your own. So you can build those from scratch. So if we look at these, there's some examples of the kind of ones that I've created. We've done application and installation. So I can install software. So we can upload a file. And you can see I've uploaded an executable and then run an install. So if you have in-house applications that we don't natively support or you've developed yourself, we can manage those through the scripting engine. We can remove software, uninstall. You could do a rollback for Microsoft KBs or create restore points. Basically, there's lots and lots of options for the scripting. It's very, very flexible in terms of what we can do. And our third approach for remediation is what we call virtual patching. The virtual patching is where we maybe don't have a patch from the vendor, so we can't apply that. We maybe can't make a configuration change. So typically for legacy applications or for applications that maybe you can't afford downtime while you're applying a patch. So the way the virtual patching works is we basically, when we first install the agent, it will perform an analysis. We're essentially looking for weaknesses in that application and its associated libraries. So this is where we identify a number of these other weaknesses. And what we can then do is we can then enable, so you can see here we have the analysis, and we can then enable either a monitor mode where we'll monitor for exploit attempts against that application in memory, or we have a protection mode where we'll actually actively block against any exploit attempts on that application. So this gives an extra layer of protection that can be really helpful in terms of reducing risk within the environment. So it's an extra approach that we can take to help reduce the risk for you. Now, one of the things that we do have is, of course, for managing the assets, we can break these down into asset groups. So we've got a lot of flexibility for the management of those assets. And this is really key for doing the asset management, the reporting, the patching, all of those different aspects. And the asset groups are dynamic, so systems come in and out when they match different filters. And also assets can exist in multiple different groups. So this is really key for the whole platform so that you can manage as needed within your environment. The kind of things that we can filter on is things like the asset name. So we can do a wildcard if you've got naming conventions. We can do workstations or servers. We can do pending reboot. So if you've got an asset that needs a reboot, we can put them into a group, reboot at a time of your choosing, out of hours, so it doesn't inconvenience anyone. They then come out of the group. We can filter on whether we have particular applications installed, whether we do not have applications installed. So if you have a key application that should be installed everywhere, we can filter on that, put them in a group. We can install the software through the scripting. And we can, of course, filter on OS family, OS versions, organizational unit, IP address, domain name, and you can create your own custom tags as needed. So if you do need other additional tags, you can add those. And then in turn, all of these can be used as filters so that we can then apply filters on all of these dashboards. So for example, on the dashboard here, we can see what's the risk status of any particular group. So we can just pick a group. You can see what's the risk status of that group. And in turn, that can be used for role-based access control. So we can create teams so that you can segregate and have different permissions for different users. And we do, of course, report. We have a full set of logging on all of these activities for troubleshooting, for investigation purposes, and so on. So we do have that. We've got integrations with other platforms. We can output events via syslog, via email notifications, and we can run a full set of reporting on a manual basis, on an ad hoc basis, scheduled as needed. So we have lots of flexibility there. In terms of the platform, as I say, that's really the key components that I wanted to show you for now. If you are interested in a more in-depth demo, we can certainly set that up, and we can extend that and go into much more detail on one-to-one basis. Equally, as I say, we can also run a proof of concept. Now, we've also just popped up a little questionnaire in the, or a short, what's the word I'm looking for? Not questionnaire, a short poll. That's the word I'm looking for. So if you'd want to answer that, could be really helpful, that we have this poll just for interactive feedback. And also, if you have any other questions, please do let me know. Now, a couple of things while you're just having a think about questions and anything that you might need to know. A couple of things that we do have coming up is, as I alluded to, our version 2 of vRx, which is going to be a big overhaul. Now, the first phase of that, we're going to be looking at addressing unmanaged devices. So vRx version 1, very much focused on managed devices, Windows, Linux, and Mac from a vulnerability perspective. vRadar then brings into scope those unmanaged devices, the switches, the routers, the firewalls, all of those types of devices. We'll have all of the findings within the platform. We'll be able to run authenticated scans, unauthenticated scans. We have CIS compliance. We have Cyber Essentials, we have PCI, we have HIPAA. So we have a number of different compliance modules. We're then later in the year, bringing in additional features. So we'll be bringing in patching rings. We're overhauling the risk scoring with additional sources of data for the risk scoring. So there's going to be some real enhancements there. So that's something to look forward to later in the year, and we will, of course, be running webinars and scheduling those and advertising those to give more information about V2 as and when we go through that process. In the meantime, so I've just seen there was a question around the licensing. So licensing vRx version 1, very, very simple. It's based around number of assets that are installed. So it's essentially, we don't differentiate between Windows, we don't differentiate between Mac or Linux, we don't differentiate between server or workstation. Basically, any agents that are installed on those managed assets, single license. So we keep it very, very simple, just a single SKU for that. In terms of the reporting, so I'll just add another question there. So the reporting, we actually have a separate component as well as the native reporting. We do also have a more advanced reporting module. So here, while we have within the dashboard, so apologies for that. I appear to have had a temporary glitch and a minor problem with my internet connection. I think I'm back, hopefully. So my apologies for that. I was just, as I say, just wrapping up in terms of what we wanted to cover. So one last thing, again, if you do want to see a more in-depth demo, and hopefully without any last-minute interruptions and disconnections like I just had, more than happy to get that set up. And also, again, as I say, proof of concept. We're more than happy to work on that, through that with you. But I think for now, that's probably everything that I wanted to cover off. And the last one is up on the screen. You will see a QR code. This also takes you to a demo. So if you want to just scan that QR code, that will take you through to a demo. So thank you very much for your time. And if you do have any further questions, we're more than happy to answer those and take you through anything else in detail. Thank you again for your time, and look forward to speaking to you soon, and hopefully see you next time.
alerts can never last. Wake me up when Patch Tuesday ends. Reading CVSS metrics. How'd I lose my hair so fast? Wake me up when Patch Tuesday ends. Seasons alerts come again, spamming my inbox, calling recruiters again. A bridge isn't too far, as my RAM rests, but never forgets what I lost. Wake me up when Patch Tuesday